Jean-Claude Van Damme has finally spoken out about Steven Seagal, and what he says doesn't just surprise. For years, fans whispered about their rumored rivalry, speculated about the clash of these martial arts legends, and dreamed of an on-screen reunion that never came. But what they've heard now is far more explosive than anyone could have imagined. It all started innocently enough, or at least it seemed that way. A cryptic Instagram post from Van Damme, one that hinted at peace between the two, felt like a sigh of relief. But little did anyone know, it was the calm before a storm of revelations. After decades of silence, Van Damme has finally come forward, offering a brutal truth that completely flips the narrative on its head about Seagal, their feud, and the myth that Hollywood has fed the world for years. The rivalry, as it turns out, wasn't just part of the script, it was personal. Back in the early 1990s, if you walked into a video rental store, they were the face of martial arts on film, heroes, to a generation that thrived on tough guy, bravado. But behind the adrenaline-pumping fight scenes and iconic slow-motion explosions, there was a simmering feud that no one outside Hollywood knew. At first, it didn't look like much. No public beef, no insults in interviews, no tabloids fanning the flames. But if you listened closely to the whispers, you'd catch the subtle jabs. Seagal, without naming names, would dismiss Van Damme, calling him a dancer because of his ballet training. It was all very sly, almost passive-aggressive. But those in the know understood, Seagal didn't. Respect Van Damme. Not as an actor, not as a fighter. For his part, Van Damme stayed quiet. His reputation wasn't just made in front of the camera. Just for show, they were weapons. But behind the scenes, the tension was palpable. Insiders noticed that the two stars never shared events. It wasn't public, but it wasn't peace either. The rivalry wasn't just about who could throw the fastest punch. It was a clash of martial arts philosophies. While Seagal stood for the fluid, almost spiritual side of Aikido, their on-screen personas reflected this. Van Damme was the emotional, open-hearted hero wearing his feelings on his sleeve. Seagal was the stoic, distant figure, the man who seemed like he had a secret hidden just beneath the surface. Their films mirrored this conflict, Van Damme's with raw emotion and vulnerability, Seagal's with darkness and mystery. As the years wore on, their rivalry became a Cold War in Hollywood, a war of pride. Because in the world of martial arts, respect isn't given, it's earned. And eventually, but a party at Sylvester Stallone's mansion had the potential to bring the fire back. Legends like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Bruce Willis were there, but it was the presence of Van Damme and Seagal that made things interesting. For years, these two had never shared a film, rarely shared a conversation, and never shared respect. At first, the party was what you'd expect: drinks, laughter, stories. But as the night wore on, Seagal, as he often did, started talking not about his own accomplishments, but about others. Overrated, questioning his authenticity. Maybe Seagal didn't expect Van Damme to hear it, or maybe he didn't care. Van Damme didn't throw a punch. He didn't storm out. Instead, he did something far more intense. He issued a challenge. "Step outside and settle it like real martial artists," he said. Seagal, trying to laugh it off, brushed him off. But Van Damme didn't flinch. He pressed the challenge again. Seagal declined and left the party. Most would have let it go at that, but not Van Damme. Later that night, he tracked Seagal to a nearby nightclub. Once again, in front of stunned onlookers, Van Damme challenged him to a fight. Seagal refused. What happened next became a myth. Some said it was staged. Others thought it nearly turned violent. Stallone himself, years later, confirmed the story, calling it one of the most intense confrontations he'd ever witnessed. According to him, Van Damme was too strong, and Seagal wanted no part of it. Van Damme never bragged about it. He didn't turn it into a press tour or write it into a movie. He let the silence speak for itself, and in that silence, the Cold War between them escalated. There was no going back after that night. The world thought the rivalry had faded by the early 2000s, but then, in a 2023 interview with The Telegraph, Van Damme casually dropped a bombshell. He revealed that he had once been offered $20 million to fight Steven Seagal in a real martial arts showdown, not on a movie set, but in the ring at the Mirage Casino in Las Vegas. The idea was for them to face off black belts against black belts. No stunt doubles, just pure skill. Van Damme said. Yes. Seagal, however, never showed. $20 million, a packed arena. The fight of the decade, and Seagal walked away. The media went wild. Some were stunned that such an offer had even been made. Others couldn't fathom why Seagal turned it down. Was it fear? Pride? Or was it something deeper? Something about the carefully cultivated mystique Seagal had built over the years? Van Damme didn't gloat when he told the story. In fact, there was a strange restraint to his words, as if he was tired of keeping a secret no one believed. He didn't need to exaggerate. The truth spoke for itself. And now, after all these years, the truth is out. The rivalry was real, and while the world wondered why Seagal never stepped into the ring, Van Damme's quiet admission tells us everything we need to know. The silence surrounding Steven Seagal spoke volumes. But even after Van Damme's revelation, there was no closure. Seagal didn't respond. No rematch was proposed. No late career showdown ever emerged. The opportunity slipped away, like so many legendary moments in Hollywood. Had defined the Van Damme-Seagal saga, a rivalry built on pride, fueled by silence, and ultimately defined by a fight that never happened. And just when the world thought the feud might finally be cooling down, Van Damme made a move no one saw coming. One that would change everything. It was subtle, no press release, no hype, no dramatic build-up, just a single Instagram post that immediately had fans doing double takes. There, sitting at a table, clinking glasses and smiling together, were Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal. Yes, Steven Seagal. The caption read, "Thank you, Steven, and your family, for the fantastic dinner. Wishing you a happy birthday. Big announcement coming soon." The internet exploded. After decades of icy silence, cryptic jabs, and near confrontations, seeing these two sitting together, no awkwardness, no tension, just what seemed like a friendly toast left fans in a frenzy. Was this the sign of a long-awaited reconciliation? A truce? Or was it something bigger? Comments flooded in with theories. Some were euphoric, believing the legends had finally united. Others were confused. Wait, wasn't Van Damme the one who challenged Seagal to a fight outside Stallone's house? There were even die-hard fans who scrutinized the video, frame by frame, analyzing every small gesture. Was Van Damme genuinely smiling? Did Seagal seem tense? Was that toast real, or just for the camera? Van Damme and Seagal reunite after decades. Read another dot in a world where celebrity feuds often end in public apologies or joint projects. This moment seemed like the perfect Hollywood ending no one expected. But there was something off, something just beneath the surface. The video was brief, carefully cropped, no audio, no behind the scenes, shots just a slow pan of the table, Van Damme nodding, Seagal looking stone-faced in the background. And that line in the caption, "Big announcement coming soon." That's what stayed with people. What kind of announcement? A movie? A documentary? A martial arts exhibition? The silence deepened the mystery. The timing felt strange, too. This wasn't just a random dinner. It was Seagal's birthday, a rare personal moment that suddenly became a very public event. Why now? Why post this after years of avoiding each other, throwing subtle digs, and never really acknowledging the rivalry? Some fans believed it was genuine. Others weren't so sure. If Van Damme had truly buried the hatchet, why hadn't he said more? Why hadn't Seagal said anything at all? Why not show them laughing, shaking hands, embracing like Stallone and Schwarzenegger had done in the past? Why the restraint? Why the ambiguity? Theories began to spread fast. Maybe it was all just hype for a film they'd been quietly working on. Maybe they were cashing in on the feud that had followed them their entire careers. Or maybe, just maybe, there was something more to the story that hadn't come out yet, a deeper, darker truth. Because while most people took the post at face value, longtime fans of both men noticed something different in Van Damme's expression. A flicker in his eyes, not hostility, not joy, something else entirely. He hadn't said much, but there was something about the timing, the silence, and the calculated wording that made it clear. This wasn't just a reunion. It was a setup for something else, something bigger. And then, in an interview, Van Damme broke his silence once again. This time, it wasn't dramatic. No viral video, no fireworks, just a quiet, composed interview. He didn't hold back. After years of rumors, missed fights, and carefully controlled images, He dropped the one sentence that changed everything. He is a fraud. There it was. No hesitation, no backpedaling, just pure honesty. Delivered in a tone that wasn't angry, but simply tired of the myth, tired of the silence, and tired of a man he believed had been hiding behind smoke and mirrors for decades. For Van Damme, this wasn't about ego. It was about setting the record straight. He talked about Seagal's self-proclaimed exploits straining CIA agents, fighting real-life bad guys, but he pointed out the undeniable truth. Seagal had never fought in a real tournament, not one. Not like Van Damme, who had put his body on the line in the ring. Van Damme didn't stop there. He brought up the $20 million fight offer again, this time with more context. He explained how both he and Seagal had been offered a chance to fight in Las Vegas, a real fight in front of a live crowd. Van Damme said, yes. Seagal didn't show up then. Van Damme circled back to the Instagram post, the one that had fans buzzing with hope. It wasn't a peace offering, he explained. It wasn't a reunion. It was observation. He had hoped that maybe Seagal had changed, that the bravado, the tall tales, the posturing had been left behind. But what he saw only confirmed what he had suspected all along. The foundation beneath Seagal's persona, hollow. The big announcement. It wasn't a movie. It wasn't a collaboration. It was the truth. The truth that had been lurking all these years, and for the first time, Van Damme wasn't holding back. The silence was broken. The feud was no longer just about rumors or second-hand accounts. It was personal, and it was public now, after all. These years of silence, challenges, and missed opportunities. Van Damme had finally spoken the words many had only whispered, he is a fraud, and there was no turning back. The fallout was swift. Fans, critics, martial artists, and former collaborators weighed in. Some were shocked, some vindicated, but no one remained neutral. Seagal's defenders scrambled to downplay the comments, claiming Van Damme was bitter or that it was all for publicity. But those explanations didn't stick. Van Damme's words didn't sound like a man seeking headlines. They sounded like a man who had finally had enough. And as clips from Seagal's old interviews were reposted, those wild stories about fighting off gangsters, breaking arms, training elite operatives, the contrast became undeniable. Van Damme's career wasn't based on image or myth. It was based on real competition, on documented discipline, on actual tournaments. Seagal's reputation, on the other hand, had been carefully crafted over the years, with little real substance behind it. Legacy isn't just built on what you portray. It's built on what you prove. And that's where the Van Damme Seagal story ultimately lands. Not in a movie, not in a cage match, but in the undeniable contrast between two men who lived very different truths. One built his career on vulnerability, discipline, and actual combat. The other built his on mystery, authority, and myth. And when the silence finally broke, it wasn't fists or kicks that left the deepest impact, it was honesty. Because sometimes the truth hits harder than any punch.